Amazon smartphone rumors return, T-Mobile's new plans shake up the wireless industry, and someone named Dead Technology is here to talk dead platforms. All that and more in the hour ahead on the Pocket Now Weekly, the once-a-week podcast from PocketNow.com, where we discuss the mobile technology landscape, from smartphones to tablets to phablets and everything in between. I'm Michael Fisher, editorial director at Pocket Now, and I'm joined today not from Honduras, as my intro script reads, but instead from Philadelphia by editor-in-chief Brandon Miniman. Good morning to you, sir.
What up, son?
And by a first-time guest on the Weekly, a Chicago resident and my fellow WebOS holdout, poor little out, Adam Dowd. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I am very glad that you are here, and I am sorry it took this long to get you on. Adam is just recovering from eyeball surgery of some point. Is that of some type? Is that correct?
That is correct. Cataract surgery. Lots of fun.
So then it is perfect that we do not do video on this podcast today for you, isn't it?
It is absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Hey, Adam, what's the story behind Dead Technology?
I was just going to ask that. Thank you for beating me to it.
Well, actually, it's kind of funny. There's I'm a big geocacher, so I don't know if you guys roll that way, but
I do as well. Geocaching is so much fun.
Epic. So we'll talk about that later. We've got a bunch of geocachers in town, and two of them, Scott Burks and Walt Grogan, have their own podcast, the Chicago Geocacher Podcast. And I was, back when WebOS first came out, I was all, get a pre, everybody get a pre. And Scott is a huge iPhone fanboy, so like all things Mac all the time. And so his remark to my get a pre was always, I've got Dead Technology. So I just said, I'm going to take that. I'm going to steal that. And I turned it into my Twitter handle, and the rest is history.
I was wondering about that. Now, I was going to ask you because I don't think that I was aware that Dead Technology was your Twitter handle until after the whole WebOS major operations shut down, after HP pulled the plug. So I thought you had named yourself in response to that. But
no.
Remind me. Now, Adam and I, listeners, met, and Brandon, I don't think you know this, met at the WebOS Nation forums, which back then was called precentral.net. And we had were you Dead Technology there, too? I can't remember your handle in the forums.
No, I was actually MGB Music on that particular forum, so that's probably why there was a disconnect. Probably
why, yeah. And then I was like, okay, wait, Dead Technology. All right, so I know, pre-central. And then all of a sudden I come back from, I think it was Vegas or something like that, and Adam's on the team. I'm like, oh, you. Oh,
exactly.
Good. But it's great to have you on the show, and we are actually going to talk WebOS a little bit here. But I do want to mention before we do that this is not, YouTube listeners will have already noticed that this is not like last week. We ran an experiment last week where we cut together a whole bunch of footage to go into the background of the podcast to make the YouTube viewing experience a little bit more compelling than just staring at the Pocket Now Weekly logo all week. Unfortunately, that is what you're going to be doing, listeners, this week. That took something on the order of 3.5 to 4 hours of editing. And it's fun, and we like to provide that experience when we can, but we just don't have the manpower to do it every week at this point. So, sorry, YouTube-based viewers. Of course, all of those of you who download the podcast, thank you, as always, but you don't know the difference. So please continue listening as though I had said nothing. I want to talk, I want to jump a little bit into our thought thread here, I think. I have recently updated my computer to a configuration that I am not familiar with, so I lost the thread. Yeah, there we go. So this week, we have Brandon Miniman back after a little kind of hiatus from the podcast, and that excites me because, Brandon, I think you do the best thought threads ever, probably because it was your idea to install them in the first place.
Oh, thanks.
Yes. So I would love to hear your thoughts on the HTC One, not just because we're enjoying talking about that phone, as always, but because we have just finished our comprehensive review, or you have, and I understand you want to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. So let's get down to some business. The HTC One got the highest score that I've ever given a phone, a 9.2. I think previous to that, the iPhone 5 and the Galaxy S2 had gotten a 9 out of 10. And the One is a little bit above that. And it's not perfect, but the thing about the HTC One, which is so incredibly interesting to me, is that it's almost hard to describe. It's delightful to use no matter what you're doing. It feels like HTC spent so much care in making everything feel so well thought out. I'll give you a few examples. This boom sound thing. When I heard about boom sound, and Michael, when we were in New York City, I wasn't entirely impressed with it. And maybe that's because it was really loud in the room where they gave the presentation. But I thought it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But it literally has changed the way that I use the phone. Speakerphone calls are not only incredibly loud, but incredibly clear. Playing Spotify music, you cannot get these speakers to distort. It's amazing, it's just crazy because almost every other phone out there, its volume goes a little too high. And when you go to that higher, when you go 10 out of 10 bars, the speaker distorts. And it's a terrible experience. Yeah. And you can't use it to listen to music. It's just too quiet. And then with boom sound, you start doing things that are different. Like, for example, I used my phone as a white noise machine the other night to help me go to sleep. And I can't really do that on other phones. They're just not loud enough. Waking up in the morning is now a lot easier because the alarm scares the crap out of me because it's just so loud. Mm-hmm. So boom sound is awesome. And then there are little things. For example, I usually turn off the lock screen on a phone. Android since 4.0 lets you turn off the lock screen. And in HTC Sense 5, you can turn off the lock screen. But HTC has done something for that. When you turn off the lock screen and you turn on the phone, you get this awesome little animation, which you don't get in stock Android or any other phone. And it's just a little way to make you say, oh, wow, they put thought into this little action of turning off the lock screen, which like 2% of people are going to do. But it just shows how thoroughly HTC has put effort and work into the software.
Did you detail that in the video review?
I didn't mention the lock screen thing, but I did use the word delightful like 1,000 times. And I sound kind of like a preschool teacher by saying that, but But Tony agrees with me. Tony has an HTC One, and he totally agrees that there's something about it that you really only get that you experience after using it for like a week. It's just so incredibly well done from top to bottom.
See, this is amazing to me because when I handed off our HTC One review unit, I did not necessarily expect you, Brandon, to give it a massively high score, just because I know you're rather. I mean, you're probably the hardest dude we have on phones. I would say. I mean, you're very stringent, and your requirements are very very particular and established and hardcore. So I was surprised and delighted, if you will, to see your score, because that's probably right in line with a score I would have given unprompted in an individual situation. So can you talk a little bit about Sense 5? Because I thought that would be the thing that would bother you the most as an Android, kind of a hardcore stock Android or ROM user.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you say that my criticalness for phones is high, because it's true. I'm really never satisfied. My vision operates at 100 frames per second, and I can notice the tiniest little bit of lag that most people can't. I don't know why, and it's caused problems in my marriage, and it's not as everything seems to be operating in slow motion around me. No, I'm just kidding, but like I could not detect lag anywhere on the HTC One. Using it for 11 days for probably a combined unnatural amount of hours, I could not detect lag. But Sense 5, I've really hated Sense in the past because it's detracted from the Android experience. And the perfect example is the multitask UI, which in Sense 4 was this 3D thing that was just, it it really took away from the experience. And when you had Android that did a much better job at it, you kind of wondered, like, why would HTC mess with something that's already very good? But Sense 5 adds to the Android experience. And in a way, Sense 5 feels like another operating system. Everything's a little bit different. Every screen, every menu is skinned. And what's awesome about the skin is that it's designed for 1080p screens. I took a lot of screenshots for the review, and I brought them up on my high-resolution computer monitors, my 24-inch monitors, and I zoomed in on the detail. And it's amazing, the stuff you can't even see with your eye. HTC has put like a little gradient on certain things. They've put slight textures on status bars and menu bars that you don't immediately see unless you're zoomed in on a computer screen, but when you're using it, it's just like, damn, this is just nice.
So they haven't really lightened up on the number of elements inside the interface that they have fiddled with, but they have lightened up on they've increased the subtlety, say. Like they're not just hitting it with a sledgehammer at every point and changing everything in a way that jumps out at you. You really have to look for it, is what you're saying.
You do, but you don't even have to look for it. You just kind of experience it. And and while I'm talking a lot about eye candy, and I'm not the kind of guy that likes eye candy, I like stock Android because it's efficient, it's clean, it's fast, it's no clutter. Sense is also very clutter-free. They've removed the shines and the stupid textures and the skeuomorphisms. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I think so. Sure.
Perfect example is the keyboard. It's this contrasty black thing that just it's undistracting. Whereas keyboards from Sense in the past, they try to do these like 3D letters that make it look like some sort of buttons on the screen. It's just it's distracting. Yeah. But Sense 5 is not distracting. It's there.
Also,
go ahead.
The functionality of the keyboard also is one of the things that really surprised me about the One, because you can type on it, and while the earlier iterations of Sense included keyboards that, as you say, were graphically different, they were also, I thought, pretty good looking. I always thought Sense made a really nice looking HTC built a really nice looking keyboard in the Sense, but the thing is, they were not terribly usable. And on the One, it is really usable. I mean, I love the stock keyboard on the One, and it's not just because the key highlights are just the blue outlines of the key, which is kind of futuristic and which I like, but it's actually really usable. Did you find the same?
I think under the skin, it's a very similar keyboard. It just looks different. I think what you might be describing, and you might not realize it, is how the phone weights in your hand. And you might have preferred the weight of the One and how it settles in your palm compared to the last HTC phone you used.
I think that is an awesome way to discuss the hardware, which I love, but it is not what I was talking about, but I still like it. Go ahead.
On that topic, one of the most important things about a phone is how it feels in your hand and how it's weighted. And there are so many phones, like the Nexus 4, like I felt this about the HTC One X. It just doesn't feel like it was made for your hand. Like it looks good on the table. It looks good in those high-resolution 3D renders that you see on HTC.com or Google Play Store or whatever. But in real life, it just distracts from the experience. Like the Xperia Z, it looks beautiful, but it's not palm-friendly. It's not ergonomic. It's not something that you could sit there and use for 3 hours of heavy emailing and web browsing and productivity. It's not made for that. But the One, I don't know what it is about it. I can use it for 3 hours straight and feel comfortable.
Really? Now, I did really love the hardware, but I've been able to continue using it because I jumped right to the Droid DNA when I switched over. Are you, except it's not aluminum, which is annoying. Adam, are you, how jealous are you or are you not of all this HTC One conversation? Your profile on the Pocket Now says you're an Android skeptic. What's your feeling on this device?
Well, I mean, I went into this podcast skeptical, but honestly, listening to you two chat on about it. I mean, I've never held it. Obviously, I've never done the hands-on or anything like that. I'm starting to become a little jealous. So. It's grass is always greener. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the Lumia. I love how it feels in the hand, and I've got the GS3, and the experience that you're describing about holding it for 3 hours, using it for 3 hours. I couldn't do that with the GS3, just because it's one of those things. It's not built for your hand. One thing that absolutely drives me nuts, and I don't know if the One is like this or not, but on the GS3. you can't touch the front of the screen without doing something. So, you can't touch the bottom buttons because they'll go back. It's impossible to watch Netflix on the darn thing because you have to use a pair of forceps to maneuver it someplace where you can actually have a viewing angle. Do you know how long it took me to teach my kids that? I mean, for God, they would be watching it. It stopped again, Daddy. Don't touch it.
And that happens with my mother.
Yeah, whenever you hand off the S3 or the Note 2, people somehow their thumbs are always attracted to those points where the back and menu buttons are, and then and they're invisible when they're not illuminated. So people, you can't blame them, right? It's just it's something you have to learn by owning the device. And
have you guys ever had someone take a picture of you and you give them your phone and they're so technologically inept that they immediately pick up the phone. They're like, oh, now I'm seeing your email, and you're like, oh God,
yes.
Okay, here, back in the camera. Oh God, it just turned off. Well, just forget about it. We don't need to take a picture.
You know what? Forget it. I don't need a picture. We'll use the front-facing camera. We'll do it ourselves. Thank you.
You just described my father. So,
well, that's why there's a good hardware camera button thing. Brendan, would you have given the One any more points if it had a hardware camera button, or is that something you don't care about at all?
If it had a hardware camera, I would have probably given it another 0.1 because I think that is so incredibly useful.
Yeah.
And it sucks that it is. I hope that one day it becomes the norm, like a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack is the norm.
That should be the thing. That should absolutely be required behavior. If you are a cell phone manufacturer and you're going to talk up your camera, whether your claims are valid or not, if you're going to sell the phone based on the awesome camera, you should have to build in a hardware camera key because it changes everything about the experience.
So saith Michael, so shall it be done.
Thank you. See?
That's
say we
good.
all.
That was gracious of you.
Anyway, but yeah, Brandon, your final thoughts on the One as we move on.
Yeah, I just want to finish up. I want to talk about the camera for a sec.
That's what I thought, because I didn't want to let you off the hook there, because I know that the camera is not necessarily up to par. So what's going on?
It's so funny because I think every podcast we talk about how HTC underdelivers on the camera for the One X, the One X Plus. And the problem is that they overhype the crap out of it. That's their number one headline feature, amazing camera. And the proof is in from everyone. The camera on the One X and the One X Plus is no good. It's okay, but it's no good. And so they have this ultra pixel camera, which maxes out at 4 megapixels. And, I was thinking I can live with 4 megapixels if the quality is really amazing. Even though you can't really zoom in, there's just not that much image data. But I get it. Megapixels don't matter if the images aren't great. So, in our tests, the camera of the HTC One is good, but it's not great, which is unfortunate. And it was very difficult because I was thinking about notching down the score of the review because of this. And it was very difficult not to, but I justified it by saying that like I said, the camera's good. It's just not great. It doesn't live up to that hype. It's a good camera. It just has some qualities about it, which I think can be fixed with software, but that don't overshadow all the other benefits of the phone.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the photos in your in the sample gallery on the review now, and I had the One for 2 days, and I did those first two camera comparisons with the DNA and then with the Lumia, and it's just nice to see what it does in someone else's hands, and it looks like you had, I don't know, what did you do? Did you intentionally put the camera in situations that were, less friendly to it? Because I see some of your results are what's your dog's name again?
Ava.
Ava's backlit in this first one, and there's a lot of light coming into the corners of the shot and stuff like that, but her nose is the detail on the nose is just incredible. So it's I don't know. I like seeing what other people do with smartphone cameras, because normally I do everything I can to make my shots look better than they actually are, because I'm usually using a smartphone camera that's not very good. I mean, what was your approach when you were testing this out?
So I've used the iPhone 5 for a while now, since it came out. And I know exactly how the iPhone 5 performs, and I think the iPhone 5 takes the best shots of any phone. So I tried to take pictures where I could predict how the best camera that I know of, the iPhone 5, would take shots. So this picture of Ava with her nose, I've taken a very similar picture with the iPhone 5. And what the HTC One got right is the detail in her nose. You can it's kind of disgusting. I mean, if you look at this picture.
Yeah, it's amazing.
This is why dogs constantly smell things, because these are like receptors that let them smell you from a mile away. But what I don't like how the HTC One took this photo is that it blew out the background. The sun was shining on her, and the camera just it was overwhelmed by the light. And then this other one with the red noses. That's kind of a tough shot because you've got some color in there, and those red noses in real life are bright red clown noses. And so I pulled this up on my computer, and I was like, this does not look like bright red clown. They look like dark pink.
Yeah, that's like a pastel red in this basket of clown noses there.
Right. And then, of course, the night shot is pretty self-explanatory. And this is why I think the software can be tweaked. The low light performance is fantastic of the HTC One. In fact, it sees more light than my own eyes. But what it does is to reduce the noise, it applies a smoothing filter algorithm thing, which makes it look chunky. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a picture of some high-rise buildings in the twilight here. And what time did you take this photo at, Brandon?
It was around 8 p.m., so sun was completely down.
Okay. Yeah, but you can still see, like, the sky. Yeah, I do see what you mean. Like, I don't know. You kind of have to... Yeah, there's so many different circumstances in which you can shoot in low light and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know if I see chunky. I definitely see fuzzy. The edges have been kind of reduced in sharpness a little bit. There's kind of like a memory quality to this photo. It's like, yes, I recall looking up at those buildings those many years ago. It's that kind of that haze. But it's more instructive to see it side by side with another device like, say, a GS3 or something like that.
Yeah, and we have some comparisons.
Yeah, we do.
If you scroll down the page in our review, and you get to see how it compares. And in some cases, it's better. In a lot of cases, it's just not.
Yeah.
So to wrap things up, full circle here, I'm going to be using the HTC One as my daily driver for the foreseeable future. When the AT&T version comes out, I'm going to buy it and use the LTE model. This one has to go back to HTC at some point, and I'm going to use it, and I am going to root it, and I am going to install a custom ROM, but it's going to be a Sense 5 based ROM that lets me do things like have the battery bar at the top, all the way at the top, have a percentage, and little things like that, because typically I would root it and put CyanogenMod 10 on it, but I think Sense, in my opinion, feels better. It feels more well-rounded than CyanogenMod 10. It might not be as fast and minimal, but I think the experience is better.
Wow.
And so that's what I'm going to be doing in the next 6 months.
Biggest surprise of the show so far is Brandon saying he prefers a Sense scan, like a manufacturer's scan over a CyanogenMod build. That's awesome. I like it when things change, and I like surprises sometimes, and that's pretty cool, man. Well, thank you for your HTC One thoughts. And you should read the review, listeners. There are indeed a lot of screenshots in there. I think it probably sets a record for screenshots and other photographs in a review. It's a very, very graphically intense one, and I enjoyed going through it. So, well done.
Woot. Oh, and by the way, for those, we kind of criticized Blink Feed a little bit, but Pocket Now will be on Blink Feed soon.
What? Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that's good news. That was one of the first things I tried to do when I got the One. I was like, oh, can I put Pocket Now? No, I can't.
Yeah.
Doll. Read the HTC One review at the site. Check out all the comparisons and so forth, making funny noises. I want to transition from one of the most popular devices today to a platform that we haven't heard about in a long time. As a matter of fact, on the podcast, I don't think we've ever had occasion to have a dedicated WebOS section, and I'm sure it won't happen often. But because we have Adam Dowd on the show, and because of a recent event, we want to talk WebOS a little bit. And the event I'm referring to is a WebOS meetup that recently happened in Chicago. Is that right?
That is correct, and not just recently, but always. It's a monthly deal, bro.
I know.
Oh my goodness. How many people go?
It really depends. We usually average between 10 to 12, and it's usually the same regulars. It's about half developers and enthusiasts. So
it's like a ham radio club meeting at this point, basically.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way.
Because back in the days of when WebOS was intense, these meetups happened, and I remember guys from Palm would come in, and there were photos of many people gathered around tables all over the country, and they're kind of hosted by local chapters. And you're the Chicago chapter head, right?
I'm pretty much the WebOS meetup head at this point. So.
Really?
Yeah, well, there's a website that you can go to where we organize these meetups, and it's meetup.com/HPWebOS. So as you can tell, it's already a little dated.
Yeah.
And there's a list of cities where all these meetups used to happen, and it's you've got your Dallas, you've got your St. Louis, you've got your Indianapolis, New York, L.A., everywhere. And now when you go down the list, you see Chicago is at the top of the list, and it says meet up in 3 weeks. And then you go down this, see the next meetup, and see the next meetup is code for we haven't planned one yet. So it says see the next meetup, and then you've got Nashville, and it says Nashville meets in 3 months, and I'll give you a little side note on that one. And then the rest of the cities all the way down worldwide, and not just US, you've got Tokyo on there, you've got Germany, you've got cities around the world that used to do these meetups, and there's only 2 that are left active. One is Chicago and the other one is Nashville. And the only reason Nashville is having a meetup is because I'm going there in June.
What do you guys do at these meetups?
Yeah, take us through a typical meetup.
Well, you want to know what a typical meetup is now or what it used to be? Because
briefly about what it used to be in the glory days.
In the glory days. Yeah. HP wanted to put together these WebOS ambassadors. And you'll notice on my profile, I still have WebOS ambassador. And damn it, I'm going to have it until they tell me to stop. But anyway, and it was our job to, put together these meetups, and we'd get together and we'd talk about, WebOS. And it was really nice because you never see a WebOS device in the wild. You'd always be like, oh, look, it's an iPhone. Oh, look, it's an Android. I've got my pre. And, it was nice to get, and the feedback that I've gotten from these people is it's great to get together where everybody knows, I can talk about cards and everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Right. I can talk about stacks and people don't think I'm talking about oil equipment or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And when it started off, it was pretty much a social thing. People would get together and chit chat. And I used to contact developers and I would say, hey, you got some promo codes? I can give away some of your apps. And we'd have drawings, and I have a roll of raffle tickets, and and I used to give away copies of Glimpse and copies of Remix, Music Player Remix, stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was working with a guy at HP, and every now and then he would send me, here, give away this Veer, or here, give away this touchpad, or, so that's, every now and then we'd have a pretty big one.
That's the most exciting thing to me, if I can jump in real quick. That is the most exciting element to me, is developer codes, discount download codes, and all that kind of stuff. That's cool. That's really cool. But when you have a guy from the company who's letting you give away hardware at these things, I mean, that to me shows a really cool kind of awareness on the part of the company of how important these hardcore fans are. And
I know, right?
Yeah, if everything hadn't happened the way it was, I would still be saying that was a really good sign early on that HP knew what they were doing. But keep going.
Okay. Anyway, so then Leo showed up and pulled the rug out from under all of us.
Adam's talking about Leo Apotheker, former CEO of HP. That's all right. Yes.
Anyway.
And did you have a meetup immediately after that news dropped? Did you have a meetup after the bomb drop where you were all freaking out like I was at home by myself?
We've had actually meetups that usually occur several days before a major news event. So we probably had a meetup right before the carpet was pulled out. We probably had a meetup right before they went open source. It seems like whenever we'd have a meetup 4 or 5 days later, and not whenever, but whenever there was news in the WebOS front, we just had a meetup a few days before. So wow. It was rather silly. But nowadays, what we do, I mean, we pretty much just do the same thing. We get together. We got a bar/restaurant in Schaumburg, which is a suburb of Chicago, that we all meet to. It's a nice central location, and we get together and we chit chat. And a couple of meetups ago, a couple of guys put Ubuntu on my touchpad, so that was kind of cool. Yes. And I actually ran across a Pre 3 that has WebOS 2.2.5 on it, which is an iteration beyond what was ever released to the public.
Yeah.
So
what is my? I've got a Pre 3 right here. What's it running? It's 2.2, or is it 2.1? 2.2. Okay. 0.4.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So now the problem with 2.2.5 is it's pretty much a developer build only. So I don't have access to the app catalog. So
Nice.
So WebOS that really doesn't have any apps to begin with. Now I can't even get those.
I think one of my favorite recollections of yours that you told me about from a previous meetup was when I guess one of the guys from either from HP or not, I don't recall, basically rolled up to a recent one and said something like, I just have an S load of Veers, right?
Yeah.
We're just like, do you guys just want some Veers?
Yeah, that actually happened at the last one. So, but anyway, at the last meetup, one of the developer guys there said, "Well, I can enable your Veer to get app catalog access." And I said, "Oh, really?" So I brought my phone and they did their magic. And so I mean that's kind of what we do. We just kind of help a brother out, as it were. So and we really still awesome. Chit chat. Yeah,
and I mean, you still get people from inside HP attending some of these at least. So, like, I'm sure you get to hear some pretty cool inside stories that anyone else would call 2-year-old news. But WebOS hardcore dudes are like, "Whoa, that was happening back then." Like, I feel like there's a lot that's frozen in amber from the WebOS time because it all collapsed so quickly, and there's still like so much. The story has already been essentially told. But there's still like little nuggets of details that just you love to find. Like every so often on eBay, for example, a white Pre 3 will pop up, or like a white touchpad. Or I understand you guys. I think I saw some photos of some really special hardware from the last meetup. Is that right?
We did. We ran across a couple of unicorns, actually, at the last meetup. It was rather reminiscent to, remember when the iPhone 4 got found in a bar?
Yes.
Similar to that, only we knew where and when the devices were going to show up. So, but yeah, there it was, just laying there. So we had to play with it. We had a couple of interesting devices. First of all, we had the opportunity to give away the first Touchpad Go. So we gave away a 7-inch touchpad to one of our members, and I was one number off on the raffle. I was kind of sad.
Do you Brandon? Do you remember the Touchpad Go?
Yeah, I'm just. Did they ever sell that? Is it for sale or just limited edition?
They did not. It was never released. It was built in China. If I remember correctly, they had a few dozen that were ever made. So
yeah, and there was a rumor at one point that they had like 10,000 that they'd already built. Now they didn't know what to do with, so they were going to destroy them. And everyone on the internet was like, "Oh my god, I need to get one," because at the time, WebOS was only at the 10-inch form factor for the regular touchpad and the and then smartphones. And everyone kind of always thought. I remember talking with people about like, "Oh my god, a touchpad Go would be amazing. 7-inch WebOS. That's awesome."
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
sure.
Even if you got a touchpad Go, this might sound like a jerky comment, but we're just talking here. Even if you got a touchpad Go, why would you use it? Well, last time I used a touchpad, it was a slow experience that made me frustrated, and there were no apps. Well, why would you use a Go and not get like a Nexus 7?
Well, let me ask you. Well, first of all, that's the point I was going to make. There was no Nexus 7 at this point. As a matter of fact, I don't even think there was a Kindle Fire. There was nothing compelling at the 7-inch form factor, and we can't talk about the original Galaxy Tab because nothing about that thing was compelling. Unless you're just obsessed with new things. So, like, and especially if you're thinking back in the time frame of, like, yeah, when you used WebOS on the touchpad, it was slow, but almost immediately after the touchpad was released, there was a really awesome software update that actually did reduce the lag by, I don't know, Adam, what would you say, like 75%?
It made a very significant difference, and actually, WebOS internals had a patch that they released that also did something similar, which greatly boosted the performance. The name escapes me off the top of my. I want to say it was like Butta or something like that. It was one of those AH names.
Yeah.
So,
so there were reasons to use it. You know, there were reasons to be excited about a Touchpad Go because it was more portable than the big, clunky, heavy touchpad. At the time, there was nothing really compelling with the 7-inch form factor, and I think we were all just excited about new WebOS hardware that didn't look like it sucked. Like, I think a lot of people were let down by the Veer. I wasn't. I loved it. But a lot of people were let down by it, and they wanted something compelling. And they're like, when the Touchpad Go was about to come out, everyone was like, great, this is more portable. I can carry this around. There's no such thing as a Nexus 7 to get me excited otherwise. So this is going to fuel WebOS development, and it's going to be cool. And
boom.
Actually, you know what? A funny story about the Touchpad Go. That was the first scoop I ever posted to the internet. I couldn't sleep one morning. I wasn't working at Pocket Now or anywhere at the time, and I couldn't sleep, and it was like 5 a.m. on like a Saturday morning. I don't know what I was doing, but I was trolling eBay, and there was a Touchpad Go, and I was like, "What?" It was the first time I'd seen such a thing, and I kind of scoured the message boards and the news sites to find out if anybody had reported on this, and they hadn't. So I kind of lost my head for a second, and I posted at, I believe it was the Verge forum. So it was like, oh my God, here's the Touchpad Go offered for sale. And I forgot, I think either somebody on the Verge made a story out of it, and they gave me credit. And look, thanks, Captain Two Phones. I was like, yes, I'm for real now. And then
I have a similar breaking news story that I'll share sometime off the air. But it was rather fun to watch.
Tell me about the Touchpad Go is kind of old news. I want to know what it was like to hold in your hand, and then we will move on off of WebOS. But I want to know what it was like to hold in your hand the Windsor Knot, which was the hardware that was announced to follow the Pre-3, or was never announced. It was rumored to follow the Pre-3, and up until now I didn't know that any hardware of the Windsor Knot existed. It was basically a Pre-3 without a keyboard, right?
Indeed. Actually, it would be actually more accurate to call it it was like a 4-inch touchpad, basically, even including the hardware home button. So it ran a version of WebOS 3. It was basically like holding a teeny tiny touchpad. It had a very slick back with a camera. I didn't ever got a spec sheet or anything, but it was basically like a custom, kind of like a custom developer build of WebOS 3. Didn't even have a phone app, so believe me, I looked. And we couldn't get the Wi-Fi to work. But whether that was a fault of the restaurant or the fault of the phone, we can't say. But it was my understanding that phone was probably about 2 months away from being ready to go out to the masses before the carpet was pulled out from underneath it. It was a very, very slick little device. The home button was really hard to get used to, just because if this is a phone, we don't need a home button. And but it was very slick, and it had a virtual keyboard, and it made many of us weep. There was a table full of grown men weeping at that table. So.
Oh boy!
But,
man, what do you think? Do you think it would have really significantly helped blow the winds of fortune in another direction for WebOS? I mean, so many people were clamoring for a keyboardless WebOS device back then. I remember it well. Everyone's like, "I want a slab," and I was like, "That's lame, but okay." Do you think it would have done something?
I think a combination of the Pre-3 and the Windsor Knot together may have injected some life into the platform, but how long that life would have lasted, it's really hard to say, just because it was, by the time the carpet was pulled out, it was rapidly becoming an afterthought. It was the only reason that the touchpad ever became as popular as it was because it was $100. So it wasn't. It would have helped, but would it have done more than delay the inevitable? That's hard to say.
I feel like we're talking about BlackBerry 10 a little bit.
Ooh.
Aren't we?
Well, that's going to be an interesting conversation to have. We actually just got news, which I said off the air. First of all, just to close out WebOS, I will say that I still use my HP touchpad as for very few things, but I still do use it, and it is sitting here on my desk right now in its Touchstone charging cradle with the Facebook tablet exhibition app going, and that still works like a charm, just as well as it ever did, and that's where I'm getting a lot of my news right now.
You're going to be sitting one day.
Go
You're
ahead.
going to be sitting with your grandkids one day, Michael, and you too, Adam. And the 40th iteration of the Nexus 7 will come out. It's like a transparent display with like a hologram. I don't know. And you're going to be like, oh, it's nothing. It's not compared. It is WebOS Hush Patty. It doesn't really work. And this is when they made things. They made it good back then.
The only thing that will not have been copied by every other manufacturer at that point is stackable cards. That's the only feature I'm going to show off to my grandkids. Look, you put the cards on top of one another.
And then,
Yeah.
and then your kids will say, or your grandkids will say, what, and how does that make the user experience better?
Here, Sonny, let me tell you something. You
All
can
my
just
kids
swipe
are
that
gonna
thing
be
right
Jimmy
off the
Stewart.
screen.
Well,
Wow,
I'll
look at
tell
that.
you what's going on here. You can throw away apps regardless.
Look at that budget animation effect.
But one of the things that came across my Facebook tablet exhibition app before we started rolling on the air was that RIMS, or formerly RIMS, but BlackBerry's Mike Lazaridis has left the company. So I think that's a little bit overdue. I don't want to talk about it basically at all. I just thought I would mention it since it was basically breaking. It was cool to see him at the BlackBerry 10 launch, which was a very boisterous and I think positive event in BlackBerry's history. He was smiling. I don't know how much of that smile was forced because he wasn't up on stage, but I don't know. Is anybody really surprised that he left?
There's probably a reason that isn't just like, I'm sure that he had some sort of contractual obligation to stay for a period of time, and then he could leave and collect some sort of severance. So
Right.
I don't know if it means anything, but it's clear that he wasn't a fantastic CEO or co-CEO. And I think that's pretty evident by where the company is today. Although it sounds like they were profitable in Q4. I don't know how. I mean, maybe they sold Girl Scout cookies or something.
Yeah, it was a small operating profit of $94 million, it looks like. But yeah, there's some updated figures here in earnings call and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I have the BlackBerry Z10 back. Brandon returned it to me in exchange for the HTC One. So
Good trade.
I really won out on that one.
I was going to say, who won that one?
But I used it for a couple days just to reassociate myself with it, and I was like, yeah, okay, I remember this, and I'm having a good time with this. And I'm sad to report that the app situation, at least for me, despite the BlackBerry App Store having grown to 100,000 available apps, still doesn't have what I need to use it as a daily driver. So I will keep checking periodically, but for now it's sitting here waiting for an After the Buzz to come in a little while. So,
And even if it did, would you use it as your daily driver?
I think the first TLDR column I wrote a couple weeks ago was called "Congratulations, Jumbo Phone Jerks." And that was directly targeted at the society that has made me not take the BlackBerry seriously. No, a 4.2-inch screen is now too small for me, unbelievably. I can't believe I'm one of you people.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Speaking of screen sizes, we didn't talk about this, but I know it's going to be true. The HTC One, and if it's successful, which I know it's going to be, is going to be the start of something very interesting. It's going to be the start of not only a new philosophy from HTC, which means we can look forward to the next HTC One, which will be presumably better than the current HTC One. But we're going to see HTC likes to release a bunch of products that are like the flagship, but toned down a little bit. So I'm praying that we see like a 4.3-inch. I'd go with 720p. That'd be fine. HTC phone with boom sound, with Sense 5, with a metal design. And I really think they're going to do that. And that will make mouths drool profusely.
You think? Well, see, we've heard rumors that they're going to be releasing a follow-on to the Butterfly, right? Which is confusing to me. Stephen and I were talking about it on IM the other day, and it's like, why would they continue the Butterfly design language when they have such a superior product in the One?
Yeah, I think the Butterfly is going to stay as a Asian phone.
Yeah. Yeah, and Verizon, when they sell through their existing inventory of the DNA, or when that contract lapses, they will finally get the HTC One here in America. So I don't know. That seems like more of a Samsung move to me, Brandon. The one you're talking about is like, making its budget Galaxy devices and tiny things. Like HTC did do a lot of variants back in the day, but I don't know. Do you think they're going to do that again?
Well, last year they had the One SV and they had a variety of One sub variants that all were the same flavor of HTC One. And so, I mean, the reason that Samsung does it that way, and they do it too much, and I think they are going to scale back with the 15 versions of the Galaxy per year. They do it because it works. They use the term Halo product, where the expensive high-end flagship is so popular that it's aspirational, and it will cause people to buy a version of that phone that is less expensive and has lesser features just because it's somehow connected to the high-end product.
Right. Well,
can I ask a question about that?
Please.
In regards to the One SV and the One X and the One name a letter, what's with the whole naming versus carrier thing? The Lumia does the same thing. The 810, the 820, the 830, the 822, the 855.8. I don't get that. Why do they have to name it a different thing? I mean, am I wrong, or is the Galaxy S3 is it the S3 on AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, Cricket, Bob's House of Phones? Isn't it the same thing? Like, regardless of where you go, is that a manufacturer thing or is that a carrier thing?
Well, there are two names, right? I mean, like, there's the Galaxy S3, which is the brand name the public sees, and then there's the carrier designation or the Samsung designation for each carrier, which does change. So, like, the Galaxy S3 on AT&T is the SGHI 917 or whatever, and on Sprint it's the SPH something, and on Verizon it's the SCHI 3500 or whatever. So there are different designations that are not brand name specific. And I think, I guess in the case of Nokia, you have the Lumia 920. I think, and somebody's going to probably correct me, I might be wrong on this, but I think the Lumia 920 is both the manufacturer designation and the brand name. So as a result, in order to track it internally, if they're making a version for Verizon with a CDMA radio, they have to be like, all right, well, this is the 922, because it's not the 920 because it's fundamentally different. So I think if there's no disparity between the brand name and the product name, then you run into that confusion. Brandon, were you going to say something similar, or?
Sort of. I was going to say, I think it comes down to the power of the OEM. Like, Samsung has the power to say, you're going to call this the Galaxy S3, and you're not going to change the name, or we're not going to give you the phone. Right. And Nokia doesn't have that power yet. HTC, I think, has that power because the One is so compelling, and it's going to be just the HTC One on all carriers, not a slight different version. But all phones also have their secondary model name that's used for internal purposes, but it's a big win when you see the same exact name across every carrier.
Yeah, it
absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. We need to move on because we have a hard stop for Brandon in a little while. So let's jump in real quick. We only have one item of Windows Phone news that I want to discuss. Sprint a while ago said that yes, we are going to pick up Windows Phone 8, which was a big win for everyone waiting for a Windows Phone on Sprint, who'd been waiting for a long time, because for a while the Sprint only had the Arrive, which was it didn't age all that gracefully. And the update seems to indicate that Sprint will be carrying the HTC device codenamed Tiara, which we've talked about before, but also Samsung's Ativ S. This is not going to be big news for anyone in Canada or Europe, but in the United States, we haven't seen the Ativ S. We reviewed it back in December here at Pocket Now. We gave it a great review. It's a compelling device, but it has not seen U.S. release. So it's very exciting to see that not only is it finally getting released in America, but that Sprint is kind of what appears to be the exclusive carrier for it.
It's going to feel really old, don't you think, when it comes out?
So that's the thing. Now, I think Stephen made a point in his news post about this where he was, there's going to be some people that are upset because Sprint actually did come out and say that their first WP8 models were not going to be 6-month-old hardware. And, of course, that's exactly what the Ativ S is. So, but here's the thing. I think the Ativ S has gotten so little attention in the United States because it hasn't seen store shelves that, no, I think people are going to see it. They're going to associate it with the Galaxy line of high-end Android smartphones. They're going to look at that back, which actually really is gorgeous in person. And I think it's going to do quite well on Sprint, with Sprint's compelling unlimited plans and all that kind of stuff. No, I think the ATIV-S is a really good match for this carrier.
Yeah, that's got Sprint exclusivity, and what could possibly go wrong with that? I went there.
I had such a nice positive note that I ended on, and then you wrenched me back in time to sadder moments. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I mean, the Tiara I think is a little more mid-range. The ATIV-S is definitely going to be the premium in this pair, and there is a little bit of concern there where it's like Sprint is releasing these two good but probably somewhat unremarkable phones when you factor in the Tiara. So I hope they're not using those to evaluate the prospects for Windows Phone 8 in general across the network. You know what I mean?
Can we start referring to premium as premium?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I want premium steak when I go to the bistro. Absolutely, we can do that.
It just sounds.
I can. I'm sorry.
Let's jump into Android while we're talking about Android. Anyway, we're talking about medium and high-end models, and we have new leaks about medium and high-end models from Sony, of all people. The codename Dogo or Dojo, D-O-G-O, should have according to the leaks here, a 4.6-inch HD display with 2 gigs of RAM, and the Gaga, which is a 5-inch 1080p handset, supposedly, from Sony.
I hope they both have terrible viewing angles like the Z and the ZL.
Yeah, right? It's so funny. Like, Sony can make such a nice display when you look at it from one particular angle, and you turn your head and it's like, oh, wow, that's great.
Why do you think that is? I'm sure that they understand that their phones have poor viewing angles. Why do they release a phone that has poor viewing angles?
I mean, every carrier decides where they're going to make their compromises, right? And Sony, why you would make it on the display, I don't know. I think they must have been backed into a corner to make that decision. For me, not that I am well-versed at running a business, but if it came down to releasing a phone with poor viewing angles and a relatively poor display, or charging $50 more for it, I would probably opt for the latter, particularly if I was Sony, but who knows what goes on.
Just playing devil's advocate here, though, it's a phone. Who else is going to be looking at it? Aren't you going to be looking at it straight on, pretty much? I mean, that's how I look at my phone.
That's a really, really good point, and I want to talk about that for a sec. We talk about viewing angles on phones, but as Adam points out, a phone is a very personal thing. So on one hand, you want to have limited viewing angles, so no one can read your data and your information or your email, which people do anyway. I've done it.
Right.
But on the other hand, you want wide viewing angles so that you can share your content. You've just taken a picture and you're in a group and everyone can see the picture as clearly as the one standing directly in front of it. But you can't have both. I think obviously manufacturers prefer to have better viewing angles. That screen protector you can put on your laptop that
prevents anyone else but you from seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's what Sony's doing, and they just haven't advertised it.
You know what I think the next big step is for this is variable side viewability. Like where you can adjust it, like it's in the notification shade on an Android phone, like the brightness controls are, and you can say, all right, well, I'm with a group of people, now I'm going to amp up the sidelight view visibility, now everyone can see it, or if I'm working on something private, okay, I'm going to go ahead and activate the security filter. That would be some really cool technology. I would almost never use it, but it would just be really cool to see.
That would be cool. It needs to be more passive than that, and I think a simple way you can do that is in portrait, your side angles are limited, but in landscape, where that's the use case scenario when you're showing a picture, it's got wide angles, and I think they can do that because if you ever use polarized lenses on sunglasses, I forget which it is, but either portrait or landscape, you cannot see the screen. There's something different about it in one orientation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. Well, so this is, I use the Lumia 920 as a daily driver as someone can now testify in real life. I will talk about that in a second. But the Lumia 920 is very, very difficult to see from the side because of that clear black polarizing filter Nokia uses to do, to accomplish various means of trickery of changing an SLCD or an LCD display into an AMOLED-looking display. I think it deepens the blacks up. It makes it more viewable in sunlight. But anyway, I have frequently complained about that in review videos and in comparisons. But you're right. I mean, practically speaking, yes, it's just you looking at the phone. I think what makes it so compelling for us, if I can presume to speak for a lot of phone reviewers here, is that it's so incredible when you do have a phone like the HTC One or like the One X even from last generation, where you are looking at it side on. You almost can't see the screen because you're looking at it almost directly to the side, but you can still see all the graphics on the screen, and it looks like a printed piece of paper. It looks like a dummy phone that someone has just printed graphics on. I mean, technologically speaking, from a nerd perspective, that's amazing to see. And I think if we all grew up with CRT TVs, which I know we did, we know what it's like to look at a screen from side on and not be able to see anything. And it's really cool to be able to see a display that treats the life differently. I don't know. But
that's a good point. In fact, it's the same thing when you look at like a really high-res screen. And I remember the first time I looked at the Retina display on the iPad, for example. For most of my life, screens were extremely low resolution and they looked like crap. And now we've got these screens that look like they've been printed on, and it's so freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it so much, and it's funny because our kids will be like, "What are you talking about? They're always printed on." Like back in the day with WebOS.
I got when I was talking about the Lumia 920s, an event leapt into my mind from yesterday. I was walking through the mall here in Boston, and I was the mall is attached to a Sheraton hotel, and I was surrounded by like 14 to like 18-year-old or 17-year-old like high school girls in like weird shoes, and I mean there were thousands of them. I'm just trying to go to like get. I was meeting a friend at a bar. I was like, "What the? Why am I can't maneuver. This is crazy. Why are there so many women in weird shoes? What is going on?" So I exit the hotel and I'm really flustered. And I'm like, what the hell was that? And I see a valet and I'm like, what's going on in there, man? And he's like, Irish step dancing competition. I'm like, sure, okay, all right, fine, I get it. And I'm about to walk away and he points at me and he kind of has that glimmer of recognition in his eye and he's like, "You're Captain Two Phones." And I was like, whoa, holy, did I, seriously? And he's like, "Yeah, I read your stuff at Pocket Now all the time." I'm like, oh my God, this happens in Germany. This happens at trade shows. This doesn't happen on the streets of Boston. So
that's crazy.
I was very happy to meet my new friend Adam last night. Another Adam, as if we don't have enough Adams to keep track of.
Well, we're all awesome.
Yeah, apparently. I've never met an Adam I didn't like. Let's move on to very briefly touch on the Kia Torque. I reviewed it. I gave it a fairly low score, but there's a lot to like about this device, and it made me think enough to post a tweet that said, reviews are more than just the scores. Remember that. I think a lot of Brandon and I often talk about the types of readers that read reviews, and I think there are a great number of them who kind of look at the score first, decide whether the review is worth their time, and then read it or they don't read it. And I think the Kia Torque, I gave it a 6.5, which is one of the lower scores I've given. But there's a lot to like about it, and I think it just made me remember that it reinforced this notion that, like, I always want people to read the review rather than just look at the score and decide not to buy it. Because not everything can be a 9.2. Not everything can even be a 7, which for a while, reviewing mid-range Windows Phone handsets, that was like my go-to score. I think I did like 4 reviews in a row that were 7s. Because that's exactly what they were. But, some things just don't measure up to that because of whatever deficiency exists. But if that is a particular deficiency or set of them that does not affect your use case, then, you're going to be very happy. I've been very happy with phones that other people have rated 4, 5, I don't think anybody was in love with the hardware on the original Palm Pre while we have Adam on the show, but... I never had an Oreo effect. My Palm Pre lasted a year. I never had to swap it out.
Yeah, I loved my 45 days with the Veer. So,
yeah. Oh God, I loved it. I don't want to. We'll get sucked into that. Read the Kia Torque review. Watch me drop a phone into some water and kick it around some, and talk about Nextel Direct Connect. Go ahead, Brandon.
No, I just made it sound bloop.
Oh yes, bloop. There are some rumors about an Amazon smartphone that have leapt up again, and I've mainly added this to the rundown to ask what you guys think of this, because we know Amazon can do tablets very well. We know that they have built their own Google ecosystem, sub-Google ecosystem with their own store, and Do you think it is inevitable, Adam? I'll ask you first for Amazon to release a smartphone.
I think if there's a company that is currently not in the smartphone market that could get away with making their own smartphone and do it well and do it just to the point of getting it so popular that it becomes a name, I think it is Amazon, just because of the whole Kindle Fire and, the Kindle Fire line, and, the build quality is fantastic. And Amazon overall, I like Amazon. They're a good company. I was tweeting not too long ago about the return policy. It's just so easy. You print out a label, you take it to the store, boom, it's done. Here's your money. Thank you. And it's just, I like Amazon, and I think that they could do it. I just don't think they have to. I really don't. We've got Kindles and we've got Kindle Fires, and they have a very specific use. I mean, even more of a limited use than, say, your Nexus 7s. They're consumption machines, and that is it. Don't try to do anything else on it. And so I just don't think they have to. I don't think they should. But I think if they did, they would probably do it pretty darn well.
Yeah, well said. I completely agree. And Brendan, are you on the same page, or is this the last thing you want to see?
I mean, it's going to happen. It's they have everything in place. They have the App Store. They have the distribution. They have the ability to manufacture. Mm-hmm. I just I'm having trouble picturing the what. I think it would be price. I'm trying to think of why someone would buy an Amazon phone. I think they're gonna shove that price down real low, and yet make it premium somehow. And it's going to be subsidized with content. They're going to expect for you to stream and download and buy stuff, and it's going to be cheaper than you ever thought.
So let me hit you with this, because every time I've been involved in a 7-inch tablet conversation this year and the latter part of last year. Which happens very frequently. A lot of my friends, regardless of their lack of techno authority or interest, really, are shopping for 7-inch and 8-inch tablets. And whenever this conversation comes up, the Kindle Fire is near the top of subjects discussed. And not because I bring it up. I'll be honest, half the time I forget it exists, even though it is a very significant piece of technology. I just don't use it. I'm not an Amazon, acolyte, so I don't use the Kindle Fire. But there are people out there, and there are many of them, who love Amazon, who always shop on Amazon, who do their grocery shopping on Amazon, to whom the Kindle Fire is still a smarter choice than the Nexus 7 because of that very Amazon integration. And I think it's these people that Amazon will target with a smartphone. So I think that there are people out there, and probably more than any of us think, who would find this product compelling, particularly, Brandon, as you say, if it's priced aggressively. Go ahead, Adam.
You know what I think would be interesting? I want to make 2 points about Amazon. One, I think they could come up with a subsidized version of their phone. They could drive down the cost. Imagine this. Let's say you buy an Amazon phone for $250. But out of that $250, over the next 12 months, you have $100 credit towards Amazon content.
Oh, totally.
And, you just pay it up front, and you say, okay, from now until the end of this year, a year from now, you can download whatever you want. You can, maybe use it towards a Prime membership, use it towards movies, use it towards books, but you can, $100 of that comes back to you in content. And then, since you like that content so much, here's some more content for you.
Right. And it's a similar model to what HP was doing when they were trying to move the touchpad, actually, Adam. Remember when they were giving away $50 app credits to purchasers? And I had something like almost $100 worth of Palm app catalog credit just for buying the touchpad. It was an incentive to buy it. And that's so much more powerful if you're talking about the Amazon ecosystem. I agree that's almost a foregone conclusion if this thing launches.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing I wanted to mention about Amazon was I bought a Kindle Fire for my kids for Christmas.
Cool.
And we got the box. We never opened it. We just wrapped it in the box that it came in Amazon. And so Christmas morning rolls around. The kids open it up. Hey, it's a computer. We can watch movies on it. Yay. So I said, okay, give it to me. I'll get it set up. I turned the thing on. This is the very first time I have ever held this device and turned it on. I turned it on. And what do I find in front of me? A list of all the books that I've ever bought on Amazon. Awesome. It actually put all my content on the device for me.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, Amazon, you rock.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a breakthrough concept that we haven't seen really replicated by any other company. I mean, how cool would it be if you bought a phone, you bought the new iPhone, you bought the HTC One, and somehow it came out of the box already set up exactly the way you want it? That's a little complicated, but with Amazon, it's kind of easy for them to do. But it's so delightful. Like you said, Adam, it's like you felt special for a sec. Like, wow, they give a crap about me, sort of.
We're starting to see that more and more, particularly in Google. Like when you get a new Android phone and you set that up, as we do, once every 2 weeks at a minimum, you're starting to see more and more information ported across profiles. Like when I set up a new Android device, not only do my apps automatically start downloading, which is nice, but and this is a little creepy, my login information transfers as well. So all of a sudden I will notice on a new Android device that I am on my home Wi-Fi hotspot, which is protected, of course, by a password.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
I never used that option to back up, to restore, because the first time I did that, it started to download like 50 apps. I'm like, no, please, I don't want to.
Yeah. Well, there are definite downsides to it, but when you say yes to it, which I don't always do, because there are various review considerations where you don't want to port like bad profile stuff. But like, absolutely, it's amazing to see. It's like, wow, you definitely brought over that password that I didn't think you were going to bring over, and that's amazing and a little bit weird.
Have you guys used Google Keep, the note-taking thing?
I have not used it yet. No, have you, Adam?
I have not, no.
No. Brandon?
I have used it, and I really like it because it's a good replacement for like Notepad. So in Windows, since Windows 95, I've used Notepad just to jot down some things. And what always ends up happening is, like, I'm about to have a call with someone, and I put some bullet points up on the Notepad, and I after I'm done, I press the X, and it's gone forever because I don't feel like saving it. I mean, I have no good way of archiving it. But with Google Keep, it's like the same kind of concept. It's just a simple, light note-taking thing, and you just type stuff into it, and it automatically saves. And then you take out your phone, and it's there. And then you can color code, so I can keep track of different parts of my life, personal and Pocket Now, and so forth. And it's just it's much less robust than Evernote, but I could never really get into Evernote. I think it's very powerful.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about, right? Because I use Evernote, and the problem with using Google Keep for me is that if I were just my regular self, if I didn't work at Pocket Now, if I just was an Android-toting normal person, I would totally use Google Keep and love it. But the problem is that it's not cross-platform. Like, Evernote has applications for every platform that I routinely use.
Yeah.
And as a result, I can sync across all those. So if you're a multi-platform person, you have to go with a solution like that. It's the same reason I heavily value Spotify over, in-house applications and whatever. So I will probably use Google Keep, but I'm not going to keep anything critical in there because I'm going to need to look something up, and I'm only going to have my Lumia.
Well, I think it will be cross-platform. I mean, I don't know if it's going to come to Windows Phone anytime soon, but it'll.
Yeah. Don't bet on it. Let's close out Android real quick if we can, just by talking really quickly. This rumor will not go away, that the Galaxy Note 3 is somehow going to usher in this era of unbreakable, quote-unquote, displays. And we're talking about a flexible display that is not the flexible display that we've thought about in the past as this kind of futuristic, rolled-up newspaper kind of thing, but a display that is not necessarily brittle, that can handle an impact or two and will not shatter as readily. So we have, basically the latest news story on this comes from March 25th, and there's not much news, and it's just that the rumor has resurfaced. And
here's the problem.
What? Yeah.
The problem is that 90% of people will scratch their phone with probably in the first 3 months, unless they have a screen protector or some sort of case. Only probably 5 to 10% will shatter their screen. So we don't need shatterproof screens. We need scratch-proof screens.
So here's the solution. Sapphire.
Good segue.
Thank you very much. So we have, I wrote a piece yesterday about Sapphire. We were shown this at MVC. We've talked about it before with this Sapphire-based screen protection, which is, on the Mohs hardness scale, like, it's way up there. It's right under diamond, and it is significantly harder than quartz, which comprises most sand that you're going to find that's going to scratch up your screen. The problem is it's a little more expensive. We're going to go into this actually in more detail. You can read the piece if you want a bit of it. We watched the demo at MWC, and it was really awesome to see concrete just breaking off to bits on this Sapphire panel on this iPhone. and not scratching it at all. But I am going to be led on a factory tour of a company called GT Advanced Technologies, which is just outside of Boston here, next week. So you should expect a video, listeners, next week detailing exactly how this synthetic sapphire comes to be, and hopefully the company will give us a little bit of an indication on how they plan to position themselves to go up against Gorilla Glass 2 and the new Gorilla Glass 3. And we're going to see Jeff again, and I think Jeff is the demoer from the video is probably one of the most liked dudes ever that is not on the part of the Pocket Now team. Like, we posted this video, and within about a day, there were something like 15 or 20 comments being like, "I like Jeff. I'd hang out with him. He seems like a cool guy."
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You know what? You know what gets me excited?
What?
We always talk about how, like, we don't necessarily need faster CPUs. We don't necessarily need more RAM because phones are just getting so fast and good. And then we think, like, what's left? Well, there's a lot left. There's unbreakable screens. There's louder speakers. There's better camera technology. There's new hardware form factors, new battery technology. And I think that now that hardware has become, or in terms of processing power, has gotten good enough, and it's outpaced what the software can handle, I think in the next 2 years we're going to see all kinds of breakthroughs in those things I just mentioned.
I think you're right. It's very tempting to say that mobile is leveling off, and in some ways it is plateauing in terms of innovation in some areas. But no, I think you're right. I think with the added tools that we're given now, and the added penetration of just sheer number of users using smartphones, it has seldom been a more interesting time to talk about a lot of this stuff. And I hope you're right. Nobody wants to be in a world where it's just a sea of slabs all running the same thing and everyone can do the same thing.
And speaking of the higher penetration of smartphones, and the statistics are like, I checked the statistic like a year ago, and it was like 30%, 20%, but it's like 70%. It is so...
What, in America?
In America. It is so high. In fact, it's so high that we're going to have to rethink how we position Pocket Now, because right now we use the word smartphone, and soon people aren't going to use that term anymore. It's just going to be phone.
Well, That's very true, yeah. I haven't thought about that. Well,
just like in Brazil, they don't call them Brazilian nuts. They just call them nuts.
Oh, snap!
What about... that's going to really ruin one of my favorite terms ever, which is dumb phone. I remember when smartphones, kind of like that term came out and became somewhat universal, and then people were like, well, how do we differentiate between smartphones and other phones? And I think it was way back, a long time ago. I think it might have been the Engadget mobile people started calling them dumb phones. And I was like, ha! And then I guess people decided that wasn't a very nice thing to do, so they started calling them feature phones instead.
How about some trivia? Let's see who gets it first. At which phone launch event did a company coin the term superphone?
Oh, HTC Evo?
No.
Adam, you got a guess?
Adam?
I got nothing. Wait. Oh, Palm Pre.
Yeah, right. Wish,
I had right.
I know. Well, an HP event was the first time I saw the word jumbo phone, but that was speaking derisively. What is it, Brandon?
It's the Nexus One.
No way, really?
Yes,
Really?
Google announced it as the superphone, and they called it pencil thin, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And it's funny because you hear that term pop up sometimes, here and there, and it doesn't. I don't think it really resonates with anyone because the definition of the superphone changes over time, and like it's so irrelevant to use that word. So it's just funny to see it sometimes.
Yeah, like I'll throw it out there when I'm talking about a phone that. Well, it's because a lot of phones today are superphones. Like, there's no phone that has come to market recently. Like, the Galaxy Note 2 is a special case because it's super large. So, and it already has a particular term. It's a phablet. Like it or not, like, that's a category term. So, yeah, there hasn't been a phone. Like, I remember the reason I said HTC Evo was because when that phone came to market, nothing beat it, at least in the CDMA space. In America. So it was very easy to call it a superphone. But I agree, yeah, the landscape's become too populated with awesome stuff, which is a great problem for us to have, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Let's talk about iOS before we jump into listener mail. Have you installed 6.1.3 on your iPhone, Brandon?
No, my iPhone has been in a drawer since the 1.
Yeah.
arrived.
Yeah, my iPhone has been in a drawer since 2008, so I also am not running this. But
they keep messing up updates, though. It's pretty incredible.
Isn't it pretty weird? Like it's funny. Like Apple is. There's a lot I respect about the way Apple does things, but their attention to detail as far as updates has not been where it should be these last couple ones. Apparently, some of the bugs we're seeing are in connecting to Exchange servers, which, yeah, snooze fest, whatever. That really wouldn't bother me if I didn't use that. But also, there's issues we thought were fixed, like problems connecting to Wi-Fi networks, which is a really bad situation.
I think they're distracted, and I mean, this is totally kind of even a stupid speculative thing to say, but I think they're distracted. They're working on iOS 7, which I think is going to debut in about 2.5 months or 2 months at their worldwide conference in June. And then they're working on the iWatch, which is a rumor, but I really, really believe that it's going to happen and that it's going to be, they're going to do for watches what they did for tablets.
Agreed.
Create a new segment. So I think, and it's terrible that current iPhone users are having all these issues, and I hear that there's battery life problems with the 6.1.3. But I think it is because that they have so many resources devoted to these other things that will define the future of the company.
And they have experienced, they've kind of used they've played their last card in the U.S. as far as the iPhone goes. For me, in my opinion, anyway, in terms of growth. Apple has had to find a way to continue growing at a ridiculous rate, and they only had one carrier left that they did not have the iPhone officially on, and that changed as of yesterday. This is T-Mobile. T-Mobile announced its new service plans and also announced iPhone 5 availability officially. I don't know if there's anything different on the price. I kind of wish I hadn't saved this to the end of the rundown because I know, Brandon, you have to go very shortly. But I want to talk very briefly about what this means. I think what this means for Apple is that they're going to need to continue aggressively finding ways to expand because this was their last major carrier that didn't carry their Halo product.
But I don't think this was ever. I mean, the stock is down, so I don't think people are like thinking, "Oh, this is going to be so huge for the company." I don't think it was ever meant to be a big catalyst. I think it's something that's necessary so that everyone can have access.
I agree, but yeah, I mean, it was only a matter of time. All I'm saying is, like, it's. I always thought that whenever I saw these debates regarding Apple's growth, and it's like, well, how are they going to keep growing? I always thought, I was like, well, they're still not on T-Mobile. If they want to get like a quarter's worth of growth, they can release for T-Mobile, and then that'll give them a little bump.
I think the kind of ridiculous thing is that you're talking about growth catalysts. The next logical thing for them to do is come out with a big screen phone because there's such a big effort from more companies that have a bigger reach than Apple, if you combine them, to convince the public that they need a big screen phone, and everyone is accepting it. 5-inch, 5.5-inch. People love big screen phones, and at some point, people are going to prefer them over the iPhone, even if the iPhone has great one-handed usability.
That's very true, and it is helpful to remember that people do not see phones the same way we do in a lot of different ways. But even though I try and keep that in mind, I get surprised. I showed my Lumia to somebody the other day, and the Lumia 920 is, as far as I'm concerned, it's mid-sized, compared to some of the devices that we handle routinely. But this person was an iPhone user, and she was like, "My God, that's a big phone." I was like, "What, the Lumia? Oh, yeah, I guess it is to you normal folks, isn't it?" And it's like, helpful reminder again. Thank you. We have to keep in touch with regular consumers. But the more compelling news out of T-Mobile is their plans. And freaking, how do you pronounce the CEO's name? Legere? Nobody knows.
Not a clue.
He had a ridiculously hilarious event. I guess it was it yesterday, where he was like, stop the bull S, and like he was just dropping S bombs and everything at the event. It was awesome. I love this new approach T-Mobile's taking to their press events. We can't actually say it on the podcast because we have a clean tag. So the thing is, the plans are very aggressive. The CEO took the position that, like, this is the right thing to do, and that's why we're doing it. And it's not. It's because the merger with AT&T failed, and T-Mobile needs to stand out. So whatever. I think there's a lot of argument. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if I were running T-Mobile, I I would have a keynote event, and I would start off by saying, "Stop the BS." I would do that. So T-Mobile is like the when you're last in an industry, you can take bigger risks than the big guys. The big guys have to play it conservative to maintain their customer base and please their shareholders, but the little guys could do radical things to shake up the industry because they have to, or else they die.
Right, and that's exciting, right? I mean,
it is.
It's really cool to see, and I'm jazzed by it. I like the new plan ideas. There's a lot of dispute all over the internet about whether the math works out, whether it's actually going to save you money in the long term, and some plans will and some won't, based on compared to the big guys. But if you're in an area that's well covered by T-Mobile, then this is at least worth checking out. It's compelling. I think it's going to net them a lot of customers, and I think based on my experience with Sprint and my experience following Sprint, I think it has the potential to backfire in their face, though, because I think it's going to attract a lot of what used to be called subprime customers, which is a horrible way of saying it because it sounds like you're valuing them less as humans. But people with lower credit scores who historically with Sprint ended up costing the company a lot of money in terms of churn and in terms of bills that then money had to be spent to collect on the money that was owed. And that's why Sprint had a big push for a couple years to kind of weed out those customers. There was a lot of controversy at one point where they were losing so many customers, and then Dan Hesse implemented this policy where it was like, yeah, and we're going to lose even more because we want to get rid of these people who are not paying their bills.
Hey,
running a carrier is tough. Go ahead.
It is tough. Wouldn't want to do it. Speaking of cell phone plans, Adam, just out of curiosity, how much do you pay for your cell phone bill?
Well, I'm on a family plan. My wife and I both have smartphones. We are somewhere in the neighborhood of $120-ish per month, give or take.
So about $60 per person.
Give or take, yeah.
And what does that get you? How many minutes, how many texts, how much data?
Well, you have to understand that I've been on AT&T longer than God, so I'm grandfathered into unlimited data.
Oh, you son of a
nice.
Yes, I am. So yeah, I've been with AT&T since they were Cell One. So I get unlimited data and unlimited text, and I want to say it's like 700 minutes, but I mean, really, who talks on a phone anymore? And then my wife has the 2 gig data plan and the unlimited text, and we share our mobile minutes. So we actually just recently, we were like the last holdouts in the United States to not have unlimited text. And like I would have all these friends texting me and like, don't text me, call me. And
remember when it was like 10 cents a text and you're like, you just cost me 30 cents, you son of a...
You SOB.
Right. So yeah. So now I've like let all my friends know, the floodgates are opened. Bring it on.
Bring it on. Text me.
So.
I was always the first guy to text in my circles of friends, and everyone was. I was that guy. I was the guy who was costing everybody money, and I got so fed up at some point. I mean, yeah, we were all in college. Yeah, we were all strapped for money, but I was like, listen, I will give you a quarter. I just sent you a text because I was in class. Shut up. You know what I mean?
What is your?
Well, it's funny.
What's your bill look like, Michael?
I'm sitting at about a little over 100. I'm at about 110 because I refuse to have a plan that doesn't include tethering because I use it so often. So as a result, on AT&T, I've got like 450 minutes. With 5 gigs of tetherable data and unlimited texting, which I wouldn't have to have if I didn't spend so much time on Windows Phone, because obviously Google Voice, I need to have it forward, and there's not really a terribly good Google Voice app on Windows Phone, except Go Voice is pretty good, but I can't use it, yada, yada, yada.
I don't understand why you're paying extra for tethering. Doesn't your phone just have a tethering feature built in? Just turn that on?
Are you being serious?
Yeah.
No, yeah, like no, it's it's built in. It's built into the software. Yes, you can toggle it, but unless the carrier authorizes it, you can't do it. What do you think this is? Europe? What do you think? Things make sense?
That's really weird because so I'm on a plan. I'm also on a share plan. It's unlimited. It's one of their newer plans. So it's got unlimited text, unlimited talk, and then I share 4 gigabytes of data with my wife. And I oddly, even though I'm a heavy smartphone user, only use about a gig and a half. And so it's basically unlimited. And it's basically $90 per person. And my bill's been around $90 for a very long time. And I guess it has a tethering feature because like I can take out my any Android phone or even my iPhone and I just flip on tethering and use it. So.
And that's AT&T?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I got to check into that. I actually have to jump off. I wish I could be around for reader mail, but I can't.
No problem. No problem. I figured that would be the case. I'm glad. Thank you for sticking around this long, and it was very, very nice to have you back on the show. Let's not have it be that long again.
Good to hang out. So I'll see you guys later.
All right, Brandon. Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy, boss.
So, Adam, you're still with me, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Wow, that's amazing. So wow, my head hurts because of the noise floor drop off. Like, I didn't know that was coming from Brandon. I thought it was coming from you. Adam is joining us today from a mobile device. You're still on the Galaxy S3 right now, right?
I am on the Galaxy S3. I had to switch hands, though, because my one arm was about to die. So
Yeah. Adam was having some mic trouble before the show, so we had to get him on the phone. And actually, you sound great. You sound so much better than Brandon. Brandon's gain must be up a whole lot because now there's no noise floor. I don't feel like I'm shouting over the roaring of just white noise. But let's get to listener mail and let's close out the podcast because we have work to do and your eyeballs have to heal.
indeed.
This piece of listener mail is from Trevor, who gives us some background information about how he's an early adopter of Windows Phone 7, and he got the Surround, which is awesome. I love talking to people who bought the Surround because it shows me they're interested in different hardware, and I appreciate that. And he obviously favors music heavily based on this question. He says, I got the Surround when it launched, the Lumia 900 when it launched, and I have an upgrade available the next month, and we'll be getting an HTC One. Okay, switching platforms. My only apprehension about this switch away from Windows Phone 7 or from Windows Phone is my Zune or Xbox Music Pass. I will be continuing it as it has always been good to me, and I tend to outright buy all my music now, so I can put the music on my new phone all I want. But my question to you is two parts. One, why don't you guys talk more about the Xbox Zune Music Pass in reference to Windows Phone? I hear you talking about Spotify and the newly added Pandora, even Nokia Music, but why did I never hear you guys mention the built-in service that pretty much blows iTunes out of the water and arguably competes with Pandora and Spotify? So I will answer this first. Adam's never been on the show before, so you can't answer this, but I will ask you about it. My answer is this, Trevor. I started with iTunes, as many people did, buying music back in 2004 and 2005 per track, and I amassed a massive library and became very dependent on iTunes, even though I hated the software on the desktop. When I transferred to the mobile and I started syncing iTunes with my mobile devices, I sort of dealt with it, but I so frequently switched my mobile devices that I didn't like syncing constantly. It was very annoying, and so when Spotify arrived, and Pandora, and gave me alternate means to listen to music, whether it be streaming or buying tracks, I embraced them immediately, or almost immediately, and as a result, there was no longer any room left for me to give Xbox Music the time of day. By the time I'd gotten a Windows Phone, I had my solution, and I had already moved away from syncing, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So Xbox Music just came along too late, in my case. Adam, do you use Xbox Music at all on your Windows Phone devices?
I don't. Despite we were talking before, my other persona being MGB Music, and I come by the music part naturally. I am a musician, but I am just so incredibly very picky about my musical tastes. Mm-hmm. I have a very specific order in which I listen to stuff. I listen to Cubs or Blackhawks games first. And after that, I listen to sports radio. After that, if I get desperate, and I'm in Chicago and you're in Boston, we're in major markets. Mm-hmm. We have we have dozens of radio stations that we can access, that'll play just about any other kind of music that you want. Then and only then, if I get absolutely desperate, will I switch to, a Nokia Music or something like that. But I never hit that particular bottom point because chances are, if I get there, I have a podcast to listen to.
So you would rather listen to like almost any other audio delivered content other than music. It sounds like you're not blasting a lot of tunes unless it's on terrestrial FM.
Or unless I have it locally stored, because I buy these little plastic things. They're called CDs,
I remember hearing about those.
I know, it was weird. I transfer them digitally that way, and I have all my music locally stored. And the other reason that I do this is because I like my battery, guys. I don't want to torture it, and so I don't stream anything. And the only thing I do stream is like Netflix, and that's only when I'm on Wi-Fi. So, and that's because I can plug the phone in at that point. So,
Yeah.
I'm very pro battery life, and I don't stream like ever, and so I really have absolutely nothing to say about this question, unfortunately.
This demonstrates just how uniquely and personally focused music listening is, right? We all do find ways to do it differently. I think that once I was plugged into these various other ecosystems, as I said before, there was just no chance for me to adopt something else. But at the same time, I want to make this point. The Zune was I don't want to say it was a joke, because it was a really cool product, and from it we got a lot of the design language for the Windows Phone software. But commercially, it was a failure, right?
Yes.
So software named after a commercial failure. I know this is hilarious coming from a freaking WebOS fanboy, but software based on a commercial failure does not entice me as a consumer. So when it was branded the Zune Music Pass, I had no interest in exploring it. Just as a consumer. I'm not talking about as a reviewer right now, or as an editor. Right. Then when it was rebranded as Xbox Music, I am not a gamer. I used to own an Xbox, but I don't anymore, and I enjoyed it, but that's beside the point. I'm not a gamer. The Xbox brand does not speak to me. And I think it doesn't. There's a lot of people who are like me in that regard, and anybody who doesn't own an Xbox, basically. So when it's rebranded as Xbox Music, I'm further less interested in exploring it. And the reason I went to Nokia Music first was because I have a Nokia Windows Phone, and Nokia's suite of Windows Phone apps has been very compelling in my usage, from Nokia Transit to a limited extent Nokia Maps, even though I don't like it very much, but I like it better than Bing Maps. And so I decided I would give Nokia Music a try, and it turned out that it sort of met my needs for a minute until Spotify came along, and I was like, oh, thank God. Here's what I'm used to. Here's where all my playlists live. Here's where my home is. So I think they have a branding problem. I think they have a messaging problem. I think that's why, Trevor. I think there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't work for me, but I think there's a lot of reasons why they have a really big uphill struggle to try and communicate the worth of Xbox Music. And Trevor's second question is, has there been any more news regarding Xbox Music on Android? Not as far as I can tell. I did a quick Google to answer your question, and there's nothing I can see that's recent news. Paul Theroux talked about it 2 days ago, but that's Xbox Music Book. Yeah, no, it seems to be kind of dead, and we're not, the minute we get some news, we'll report on it, of course, but not seeing anything right now. So Trevor closes by saying, loves the podcast and the plethora of videos that keep me perpetually behind on YouTube. Trevor, thank you so much for watching, for listening, for reading, and for sending in this piece of listener mail, which was a really solid question, and we really appreciate it. Just another tip, guys, for if you're going to write in, please do write in, and we'll give you the email address at the end of the show. But this is the kind of question we love. That's a very specific question that is compelling and interesting to a wide array of listeners. If you're just going to ask us whether we think you should buy a Lumia 920 or an HTC 8X, that's not as compelling. But we appreciate all pieces of mail that come in. And I think with that, we're going to go ahead and close it out today, because we have other stuff to do. Adam, do you have any closing thoughts from your first time on the show? We really loved having you on, and if you would like to say goodbye to the listeners, we will absolutely have you back very soon.
Well, I loved being on. It was a marvelous time. Unfortunately, my day job keeps me busy on the days that we typically record podcasts.
Yeah.
But,
what is your day job, Adam?
I work in tech support for an online university, so I can't log in, I can't submit my assignments, blah blah blah. So that's kind of what I do, and it's a 24-hour call center, and it works for me because I work Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, which means I only have 2 days of daycare that I need to pay for. So yay!
Nice.
And that it'll be like that for another 2 years until my daughter starts first grade. So
that's great, man.
But I wish my day job didn't keep me on these days. But believe me, whenever I have a floating holiday, I will definitely look at Wednesdays and Thursdays on the calendar and think, So
yes.
There's always the possibility of a long lunch break, but yeah. So it was a good time.
We always go overtime anyway, so we would probably get you in trouble anyway. But
probably.
Yeah, but no, we'd love to have you back in the show. I mean, it was great, and it was just first of all because you're a new team member. I wanted to get you on the air, but also turns out I like the tone of your voice. So I really would love to have you back, and you've brought a lot of good points to the conversation. So thank you.
You're very welcome, and I thank you for having me.
And we will see you very soon. And listeners, we will see you next week, because that is it for this episode of The Weekly. You must find us on Twitter. We have conversations there all the time. Brandon is at Brandon Miniman. Adam over there is at Dead Technology, spelled like it sounds. And as always, I'm at Captain Two Phones. You can also follow Pocket Now officially at Pocket Now on Twitter, as Pocket Now on Facebook and Google+. Leave us a review on iTunes or Xbox Music. And if you have a topic, question, or suggestion for the podcast, or you would just like to say hello, podcast@pocketnow.com. Thank you so much for listening. As always, see you next week. Hey everybody, it's Michael Fisher with PocketNow.com reviewing the new four-wheeler out in the dunes somewhere north of Idaho.
That's funny.